What if dragons were real? Not the mythical, magical kind, the biological kind. What would a creature capable of flight, fire, and the size in a jumbo jet actually look like, according to science? Because here's what most people don't realize. The basic components of a dragon already exist in nature, separately. What if evolution had combined them? Welcome to the most rigorous scientific thought experiment in paleontology and zoology, the biology of dragons. First, the evolutionary ancestry. Where would dragons have come from? The most scientifically plausible answer, an extreme branch of the archosaurs, the same group that gave us dinosaurs and modern birds. Dragons would most likely have evolved from a large pterosaur-like ancestor that developed terrestrial hunting behavior and gradually grew larger over millions of years. Size. Let's do the physics first. A flying creature the size of a dragon faces one fundamental problem, the square-cubed law. The largest flying creature ever was Quetzalcoatlus, 10-meter wingspan, 250 kilograms. A realistic dragon would need to be 3 to 4 times heavier. Physics says flying at that size requires radical solutions. Solution 1. Hollow bones. But not just hollow, pneumatized to an extreme degree. Air sacs throughout the skeleton, like modern birds, but taken to the absolute limit. Solution 2. A hydrogen-based lift system. Some biologists have speculated that dragons could produce hydrogen gas internally, the same gas that makes things float, stored in specialized chambers. And here's the beautiful part. That same hydrogen, used for buoyancy, becomes the fuel for the fire. 2 problems solved with one system. The fire mechanism. The bombardier beetle already does something similar. It mixes 2 chemicals in a reaction chamber to produce a boiling caustic spray at 100 degrees Celsius. A dragon's fire organ would work similarly. 2 separate glands producing precursor chemicals. A spark-producing structure like a biological flint at the mouth. Mix, ignite, fire. What chemicals? The most plausible candidate, a mixture releasing fluorine compounds, some of the most reactive substances in nature. A fluorine fire burns at over 1,000 degrees Celsius and cannot be extinguished with water. The wings. 4-limbed dragons, with 4 legs and 2 wings, are biologically implausible. 6 limbs are almost unknown in vertebrates. The most plausible dragon body plan, 2 legs, 2 wings, like a giant bat or pterosaur. The wings double as front limbs. When on the ground, the dragon walks on its wing knuckles. Wing membrane composition. Dragon wings couldn't be feathered, too heavy. The wing membrane would be similar to a bat's. Thin skin stretched between elongated finger bones, laced with blood vessels and muscle fibers. Wings surface area required. A 1,000-kilogram dragon would need approximately 200 square meters of wing surface to generate enough lift. That's the floor area of a large house. The skeleton. Dragon bones would need to be simultaneously ultra-light and ultra-strong. The solution? A carbon fiber-like biological material, stronger than titanium at a fraction of the weight. The muscles. To power flight in a 1,000-kilogram body, a dragon's flight muscles would need to be approximately 40% of its total body mass, compared to 15 to 25% in birds. The heart. A dragon's heart would need to pump blood against enormous gravitational pressure. Its neck alone could be 10 meters long, requiring the heart to pump blood 10 meters upward. Solution. Dragons would likely have multiple hearts, like some invertebrates, or a series of auxiliary pumping stations along the neck, like booster pumps in a water system. The brain. Intelligence. A creature this complex and with these survival strategies would likely be highly intelligent, comparable to modern great apes or possibly higher. A highly intelligent apex predator that breathes fire and has 30-meter wingspan. Think about what that means for every ecosystem it inhabits. The scales. Dragon scales would be osteoderms, bone embedded within the skin, like crocodiles and armadillos. Actual bone armor. Fireproof, swordproof. The fire-resistant biology. How does the dragon not burn itself? The mouth and throat are lined with a biological ceramic, a heat-resistant protein matrix similar to what lines deep-sea hydrothermal vents. Respiration. A dragon would need oxygen consumption at approximately 20 times the rate of a large mammal. This requires a radical respiratory system. The solution? A bird-style flow-through lung system, but with additional air sacs, operating at higher efficiency. Air moves through in one direction only, extracting almost all available oxygen. Food requirements. A 1,000 kilogram ectothermic-like dragon, conserving heat through scales and metabolism, might need to eat once every 2 to 3 weeks. A 1,000 kilogram endothermic dragon, once every 2 days. What would a dragon eat? At 1,000 kilograms, needing massive caloric input, large prey exclusively, whales in coastal regions, cattle and horses on land, possibly other large predators. Habitat. Where would dragons live? They would need vast territories. Estimates based on comparable predator densities, 1 dragon per 10,000 square kilometers. Mountain habitat would be ideal. Thermal updrafts for flight, caves for shelter, elevation reducing atmospheric pressure slightly, reducing flight energy demands. Sleep. A creature this massive with this metabolic rate would require significant sleep. Estimates are 16 to 18 hours per day. The remaining 6 to 8 hours, hunting, flying, and territorial behavior. Now let's ask the most fascinating question. If dragons existed today, what would happen to human civilization? First, reality check. Modern military hardware would be able to kill a dragon. A single missile strike to the right location. Dragons would be endangered, not dominant. But in the pre-industrial world, say medieval Europe or ancient China, a single dragon would be effectively unkillable by any available technology. Dragon fire range. Based on the chemistry, a dragon could project fire 20 to 30 meters, enough to engulf a medieval village in seconds. The ecological impact of real dragons. If 10,000 dragons existed globally today, distributed across suitable habitats, they would be the dominant megafauna on Earth. Every large prey species would evolve in response. Elephants, whales, hippos, all would show dragon defense adaptations within 100,000 years. Human civilization would have developed completely differently. Every city would be built underground or in deep valleys. Every culture would worship or war against dragons. The lifespan. Based on reptilian metabolism and large body size, a dragon would likely live 200 to 400 years, possibly longer. A 300-year-old dragon would have witnessed 15 generations of human civilization. If intelligent, and we established they would be, what would they understand about us? Reproduction. Dragons would reproduce slowly, another trait of large, long-lived animals. Clutch size, 2 to 4 eggs. Incubation, 18 to 24 months. Maturity, 30 to 50 years. Dragon hatchlings would be vulnerable for the first decade, unable to fly, unable to breathe fire, hidden in mountain caves by their mothers. The sound of a dragon. Based on the size of its larynx and resonating chambers, a dragon's roar would be audible from 30 kilometers away, lower than any sound a human can produce. The smell. A dragon's olfactory system would be comparable to a crocodile crossed with a large shark. It could detect blood in the water from 10 kilometers, a herd of cattle from 20 kilometers in the air. Now the question everyone is really asking, if dragons existed today without being detected, the answer is almost certainly no. The real reason we don't have dragons, the oxygen argument. 300 million years ago, oxygen levels were 35% compared to today's 21%. Giant insects could fly. Giant creatures could sustain flight. Dragons might have been possible then. In the Carboniferous period, dragonflies had 70-centimeter wingspan. If that oxygen level had continued and evolution had continued on its path, something like a dragon was not impossible. What if dragons did exist briefly in an ancient high-oxygen period? What if the myths are actually biological memory of a time when such creatures roamed? Every culture on Earth has an independent dragon myth. No contact between ancient China and ancient Wales, yet both have fire-breathing, flying reptiles in their mythology. One scientific hypothesis, the dragon myth is a composite memory of real apex predators: eagle, aerial threat; crocodile, aquatic reptile; snake, ground predator. Our brains evolved to recognize and fear this combination. The Komodo dragon, technically a lizard, not a dragon, is the closest living approximation: 3 meters, venomous, apex predator, scale up by a factor of 100 in mass. If you could engineer a biologically plausible dragon today using real evolutionary principles, here's what it would look like: the complete biological specification. Color and camouflage. A dragon at this size has no predators, therefore, no need for camouflage. Instead, they would likely be brightly colored like poison dart frogs, advertising their lethality. Social structure. Given intelligence levels comparable to great apes and extreme territorial requirements, dragons would likely be largely solitary, pairs only during mating, mothers with young for first decade. Communication. Highly intelligent, long-lived creatures develop communication. Dragon communication would likely involve infrasound, like elephants, audible over vast distances, combined with visual displays and scent marking. The greatest gift dragons would have given human civilization: fire. In a world with real dragons, humans may have learned to use fire by observing dragon fire-starting behavior centuries earlier. The ultimate question: if we could bring back dragons through genetic engineering, combining the relevant genes from existing species, should we? What would happen? The answer, according to ecologists: if we did create a real dragon, the most responsible approach would be a single, monitored individual on a remote island, the world's most extreme conservation project. Dragons aren't real, but everything that makes them terrifying, magnificent, and impossible already exists in nature, scattered across millions of species. Evolution never combined them, but it came close, very close.